Okay. Hello, there we go. Thank you guys. Let's see, I'd like to call our board meeting, our governing board meeting to order at 5:19 p.m. And again, good evening to everybody, both in person and watching via YouTube live stream. Let's begin with our tribute. In partnerships with tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. With that, may we please have a roll call for attendance, Mrs. Valenzuela?
We have roll call for this evening, Tuesday, March 21st. Ms. Jessica Bueno. Here. Mr. Regional Carrillo.
Here.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa. Dr. Alicia Vink.
Here.
And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Present.
Thank you.
With that, we do have a quorum and we will proceed. Let's see. May we please have the Pledge of Allegiance, Dr. Gonzalez.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the adoption of our agenda this evening. Do we have a motion to adopt our agenda as presented?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno.
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo.
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink.
Aye.
And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion does pass. And we will move on to item A6, our awards, recognitions, and announcements.
Good evening, President Trujillo and board members and all of our guests. We have a number of celebrations this evening. And to begin with, I'm going to ask Mr. Mike Manley to begin with our first celebration, looking at our business partners luncheon.
Just making sure our technology works. President Trujillo and Governing Board, I was going to share about our Business Partners Luncheon. It was an exceptionally well-attended event on Thursday, March 9th. We hosted our Business Partners Luncheon and we were excited to have over 60 partners in attendance. I'm told this blows our previous attendance for business partners out of the water. We shared information about all our schools being A and B rated schools. Kenilworth's A+ School of Excellence recognition, the successful passage of our bond and override elections, successful staff recruiting and retention efforts, our Kids at Hope initiative and new student outcomes focused governance framework, and information on our upcoming educational showcase, which is this Saturday. I heard it's going to be also an amazing event. And this business partners event was the largest we've ever had, and the number of guests shared was one of the best events that we've had attended. So it was a wonderful time. Back to you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. And next, I'd like to have Dr. Ailshire come forward to talk to us about the an event that happened last week at Kenilworth, but he's also going to report on an event that's happening this Saturday that we hope a lot of people are going to join us.
Good evening there. Good evening, President Trujillo, governing board members, cabinet, our wonderful community, those here and at home. It is my absolute thrilling opportunity to announce the incredible work being done at Kenilworth in celebration for their Sci-Tech Festival and A+ celebration. As you recall, we were celebrating that recognition at our previous governing board meeting. Well, on Friday, March 10th, Kenilworth School was the host site for the Arizona Sci-Tech Festival. Students and families participated in STEM-related activities and enjoyed a petting zoo. face painting, balloon artists, and so much more. Because as you can see by the next slide, yeah, that's it. That is Principal Anthony getting a A+ shaved into the back of his head. The school also celebrated their A+ School of Excellence Award presented by the Arizona Educational Foundation, with Principal Anthony even having his head shaved with the A+ emblem. So congratulations to the Kenilworth community and their incredible team there. The other opportunity that I'm very happy to share with you is the highly anticipated educational showcase, which will be happening this weekend. We would like to invite the Phoenix community to join us for our educational showcase. That's going to be on Saturday, March 25th, 2023 from 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at Hants Park. This is on the east side of the Burton Barr Public Library. This is a free event where Phoenix #1 will celebrate and promote public education, showcase the district schools and programs, and even enroll students for the 2023-24 school year. Come check out our free preschool and full-day kindergarten programs at all of our schools. We'll have an entertainment stage, community vendors, and even food trucks for people to enjoy the lunch in the park. And all of our schools will be taking center stage and performing throughout the entire day. The event is free, open to the entire public, and all guests are encouraged to bring a blanket for a beautiful day full of cultural and educational enrichment. And I look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you.
And now I'm very excited to announce that we have 10 nationally board certified teachers in the Phoenix #1 school district. This is an incredible process that they go through. It's a lot of opportunity for them to reflect on practice, but they have to demonstrate not only the reflection of their practice, but also what they have done to improve their practice through the course of this endeavor. And so it's a 2-year process, and we are very excited to be able to present these teachers. And so we do have some teachers in the audience with us. I know that Susan Bauer, the art teacher from Herrera, is here. So Susan, would you like to stand up? We also have Angie Eddington, the IEIS at Faith North. And we have Maeve Drake Lavelle, who's our special education teacher at Faith North. And Mara Carrasquillo. And it's perfect time. And all of these teachers are outstanding teachers and great representatives for our district. So just very quickly, I'll read their names. Megan Bickert at Whittier. Kempfet Hecht, and she's one of our gifted teachers. Giselle Meisen, a master teacher at Edison. Marissa Putra at Montessori. And Jennifer Sumida, one of our IEISs. She's at the Lowell School, and then Yolanda Wellington also at Montessori. So congratulations to all of our teachers who put in this work. And that concludes our awards and celebrations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. What a celebration. With that, we will move on to our superintendent's report. Will you be sharing that, or might we have a slight connection with Dr. Davila Hagigat?
I am Dr. Hagigat tonight.
The floor
So
is yours.
I will be sharing the superintendent's reports. Earlier this year, we transitioned students from Dunbar to Magnet due to staffing issues that we were having. And so one of the promises that we made is that we were going to make sure that the families who were transitioned had an option to give us feedback about where they wanted to remain for the next year. So we did a survey of those families who were impacted by this transition, asking about their experience at their new schools, because we had students who transitioned to Herrera, Bethune, and to Magnet. So we asked about their experiences, and we wanted to share those results. So 59% of the families that were surveyed responded. Of those, 69% reported extremely satisfied or satisfied with their educational experience at the school that they had transitioned to. The primary reasons that families want to continue in their existing schools included academic success, special programs and initiatives that were available to the students, or that transportation was provided, allowing them to attend to these schools. Nearly 68% of those parents are interested in staying at their current school. The plan for next year is to keep the students at the current location, since the majority of the students are at Magnet Traditional for their 7th and 8th grade years. And any siblings that are attending will be able to continue to attend and will provide the transportation. And I will be sharing the full survey results with you in an upcoming board update. That concludes my superintendent reports.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. With that, we will move on to our board members' reports. Item C1, I would like to share mine. Being that March is Women's National History Month, we commemorate and encourage the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role that women play now and historically. So I just really want to celebrate the women in Phoenix Elementary, past, present, and future. The quote, of course, I've got, I believe it says, G.D. Anderson, feminism isn't about making women strong. Women are already strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength. And that's my board report. Thank you all.
I don't have much to report other than I hope that our staff enjoyed their spring break and that yesterday and today wasn't a too hectic day, but welcome back to school.
Y'all are always so hard to follow. That was what I was gonna say, Ms. Bueno. I did go back to school though yesterday and today, and boy, I'm so excited for this last quarter. So thank you again to all of our staff and teachers who showed up yesterday.
Just reiterating, congratulations to Kenilworth. I went to the event. It was wonderful. It was fun. Got to see Kenilworth School, and I'm excited to see the Family Empowerment Center when we can. It was a family field event, family fun and field event. I got to see the A shaved. I wish she was here so she could show it off. And then also there was another event. I feel like there was another event that the Giro, oh yeah, and yes, I take the Giro fundraiser was awesome. There's a lot of stuff happening. Sorry, the Giro fundraiser was awesome. So thank you to all of our staff that did go and support an organization that is supporting our students. That is a partnership that we just got to witness during the time of COVID, I believe, right when we had brought, not the time we were still in COVID, sound like Gail Garcia Marquez, but when we started peer program, right, to support the gaps we had in our peer program, and just seeing that in person, we saw how engaged our students were with the activities that Giro provided, and I'm excited that we've chosen to continue our partnership with them to support after school activities for our students. And again, that was a fun field event. I lost all the bingo. I'm not a good bingo player, I guess. But thank you again, Giro, and thank you to our staff for during your spring break and just going to that event too and showing support.
Thank you, thank you. I wasn't able to make those, so I'm really glad that we had some board representation there. And definitely shout out to Kenilworth's celebration. That looked amazing on social media. So way to put a party together. With that, we will move on to our community communications, item D1. Do we have any electronic ones this evening?
We do not have any.
Period. Okay. I was going to give the spiel about the time and how to do those going forward. But okay, with that, we will move on to item E1, the approval of our consent agenda. Our consent agenda lists several items for approval by the board in a single motion. The items listed under the consent agenda have gone through the superintendent's cabinet review and recommendation. The board has been able to ask questions, review those items, and that's why we do them all in a single motion to save time. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Roger Carrillo, a second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to approve our consent agenda, Mrs. Valenzuela?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item F1, our enrollment information update. The floor is yours, Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, board members, community members, I'd like to invite Mr. Rocky Baruman, who is our Director of Management Information Systems. And we are going to be presenting together to talk about our enrollment, our new enrollment procedures.
Welcome, Rocky. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Oh, gosh. So, good evening, President Trujillo, board members, cabinet. Last time I was here, I was asking for money about 8 years ago. Well, more than that for the smart boards. But I'm actually excited to be here tonight and share with you guys a couple of experiences we had with or visiting Litchfield. Few months ago, we had the opportunity to go to Litchfield Elementary and visit their enrollment center. Got really excited. We excited about going over there. We got there. There was a welcoming environment. We got to their section where they, parents are waiting while they're, filling out forms, or they need to get some stuff to get prepared for the enrollment part. So there was some tables and chairs. There was a couple of toys for the kids to play while the parents are filling out their forms. And I got really excited about that because I think we have amazing parents at Phoenix Cell. And it's including myself. I'm a parent of a student here at Phoenix Cell. One of my kids promoted 2-3 years ago. He wants to come back to work here. So it's, again, we have an amazing parents, and I think amazing parents deserve amazing service. So I got a chance to look at their welcome center, how they have the table set up, chairs. They had water, they have restrooms close by. So that got me really excited. And later I took my team. So we all went back and kind of went in the back and look at their process, how they process the online enrollment. What kind of computers, what kind of devices, what kind of equipment they have, processes, checklists, and other information that it's there that it's needed to be able to do online enrollment. So it was, it's really excited about the opportunity of going over there and looking at their setup. And I just want to mention Tim Miller, the director of Litchfield, for allowing us to going over there and actually going back there and showing us, hey, this is how you enroll a kid from start to finish. So there was a couple of families there. We were able to see the enrollment process, how the families came by, and they provided Chromebooks. Here's a Chromebook. You have to fill out your registration form. And the first part is really collecting data, emails and names and stuff like that. So that was really cool, having Chromebooks available there so they can fill it out and register. So it was really awesome to be there, and I'm really happy and excited to share with you guys that experience. I think, as we look at enrollment in general, I think it's very important to look at this piece as well.
So very quickly, we wanted to make sure that we're focusing on our board guardrails. And so one of our superintendent guardrails, number 5, is around enrollment practices. Specifically, the superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without implementing a community-focused plan to mitigate student enrollment barriers. And so in this particular presentation, we're speaking to the inputs of training for our front office staff and for our enrollment faculty here at district office, as well as our family and community engagement center support staff, looking at an online enrollment process. Currently, we have a paper process that really slows down our procedures and creating those welcoming environments. And part of that is actually allowable for us thanks to ESSER and to the passage of our bond. So the outputs for that then are making sure that our families feel the support at district office and at schools, that we have clear updated practices and quick turnarounds to welcome families into our schools within 24 hours after they have completed the enrollment process. And then, of course, the outcome for that is increased enrollment at all of our schools. So we've talked a little bit, Rocky's already talked a little bit about some of the processes, but I'll let him speak a little bit more to what exactly the training looks like that we will be involving our staff in.
So in regards to the training, there's a lot of, there's that online training that needs to happen to be able to enroll the kids. There's also training in different processes to be, to make sure that we have accurate data. So there's other teams that are going to be coming in and joining us as we move forward with the online enrollment. So there's, we also provide feedback on the systems that work well, identifying procedures, practices that need to be updated. I think we're in a place nowadays with technology upgrades and stuff that we kind of need to move forward into the technology world and utilize the tools that we already have to provide families with different options, whether they want to enroll at schools, they want to enroll here at district office. So there's going to be training provided from our vendor for, from EduPoint. So, and also provide shared responsibility to ensure processes connect families and students to the resources to help them succeed in school. So,
and part of that connecting them to resources is when we have accurate data really quickly from the families about what their students' needs are, we're able to supply those needs immediately to students. So we don't have a misidentified student, or we don't miss a student who has been identified because we're buried in paperwork. This will help create flags that will help us identify very quickly what our students need and how we're going to support them.
Thank you. So again, I think I would have talked about a little bit about online enrollment, but it also allows us to move from paper enrollment to online, right? Which leads to more accurate data, because the initial part of the online, we get the information from the parent, their email address, so we have contact information later to utilize. It also expedites the review of the documents. Again, providing Chromebooks for family. Right now, we do have a Chromebook ready to go. So I'm really excited about that. It's because as soon as we start fully implementing this, we have equipment that is available at this point to be able to take to the school, and they can utilize not just for online enrollment, but sometimes parents just like to come out to school and get online and check some stuff. So that device will be available for them for multiple uses, not just online enrollment. It also expedited the turnaround time for families to be notified when they're enrolled at the school of their choice. So again, with all this stuff, it's accuracy of data, because we use data. I've seen so many presentations about data, and I know you guys love data. So, but the data has to be right, has to be correct and accurate. So this will help us get there. So.
And finally, our third output for online enrollment is the welcoming environments. And so we're talking about having parents working with a Chromebook to be able to register, but we don't want to lose the human touch because we know for many of our families, it may be off-putting to have to sit down with a computer. So this is where our family and community engagement specialists come in. They've actually been part of a task force that have helped to design the check process to make sure that everything that the family needs is present and that they can sit with them and translate for them when necessary, help them find the resources that they need and help them gather those. So there's they've actually created a folder with these little check boxes on it so that they can see. And Ms. Bueno knows this, they presented it at the previous family engagement task force meeting to get more feedback. Our special education department, exceptional student services, and our English language department have all been working in tandem to make sure that we're getting all of the right documentation in place so that when students enroll, they're able to get this, as well as our special populations coordinator. So we're very excited about this. We also envision this becoming an opportunity for us to really create welcoming spaces. You'll notice when you walk into our lobby, we've already started to redesign what the lobby looks like so that it's more open and welcoming to families, but we're going to have soft seating. As Mr. Baruman mentioned earlier, at Litchfield, they have the toys, the basket of toys for children to play with, really creating that warm, welcoming environment so that when families come in, they feel like people here care about me, they care about my child. I want to be part of this district. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into very quickly our statute and governing board policies. This is around open enrollment. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that as a public school, we have to provide open enrollment to students. No tuition should be charged. And so of course we aren't charging for our state-funded educational programs. Currently, we don't charge tuition for any of our programs. So we have to be looking at what is required in terms of enrollment. The policies have to be easily accessible on our homepage from our website, and so that and available in English and Spanish so that families can see this. And this is actually in policy that was approved last year by the governing board. So we want to make sure that those policies are up to date and are enacted on our website so that people have the information that they need. We want enrolling in school to be as easy as purchasing an airline ticket, whether you're getting a ticket on your phone, on a computer, or on paper. We want to make that process of enrolling simple and easy for you to access and accommodate your students. The other component here in open enrollment is that in the event a program is at capacity. And so when we talk about a program, we're thinking about an exceptional student services program serving special education needs, or our signature school programs, or our capacity for like our autism program. So if we don't have capacity to serve, then we have to create a wait list. We have to continually be checking that and opening it up whenever a seat comes available so that parents can enroll anytime throughout the year to be allowed into the program that they are desiring to be part of. We do have a district preference for capacity that goes to resident pupils, meaning pupils that are residing within our boundaries, pupils who are returning to the school from the year prior, and siblings of pupils who are already enrolled. And then through federal statute, we are also looking at making sure that students who are in McKinney-Vento or who are unsheltered or homeless students are able to attend, and that their students in foster care are also able to attend. Those are priority areas. And then there's also language that we have in the event a school is closing. We have to be able to make sure that we have schools that are available to take the students from the school that is closing. So our timeline, very quickly, this has all begun since January. Mr. Baruman and his team have been going out and meeting with the people at Litchfield and working with the different teams to develop what our procedures are going to be. Then we developed our protocols for the online enrollment. We've already started receiving the first level of training for that, so that tomorrow we will continue that training with all of our FACE specialists and our front office staff so that they are part of that. And then at the education showcase event, We are going to have computers set up there, so families who are coming will be able to enroll right there. That'll be the beginning of our soft pilot. And then through May 23, we'll be able to make refinements and making sure that everything that we're doing is working as seamlessly as we envisioned so that we can continue to roll this program forward. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you guys very much. Rocky, you really hit the concern right on target for me and my understanding with our enrollment process. Being a young parent, enrolling your kids for school, when you don't feel comfortable and you don't feel welcome and you don't feel safe enough to ask questions is very intimidating. And each district is so different. So it brings me a lot of good feelings to know this is the direction that we're going on, and you've taken the initiative to go see what's going on in other districts to see what's working and bring that back here. So I just want to give you kudos and thanks for sharing that story and experience, because so many parents have different experiences and we'll never be able to calculate them all, but starting somewhere and getting on the bandwagon for new technology, I'm really excited to hear and see how it plays out for this year. So thank you guys very much for this information.
President Trujillo, Rocky, Dr. Gonzalez, I would love to, whenever you figure out what PD looks like, would love to come and observe one session at least. I did the iReady one and then the smart board one when we got the new smart board. Just so that we know, right, what we're voting for or approving or adopting or talking about, that how we're seeing it, like how our staff is experiencing it. And then my question is for the I have a question or just a comment too. Whether on their enrollment system, and what I would like to see on ours is some way to identify those resources, issues that they're dealing with. So maybe we can kind of collect that data about if they're dealing with food insecurity, stuff like that. And since they're going to be dealing with their family special liaisons, steer them to the empowerment center. I think it'd be cool to see what those top salient resources are that they need, and we can provide them there. But that's about it. But I'm excited. Thank you for going out there and seeing what they're doing in action. And thank you for reporting to us and keep us up to date on that PD too.
We will definitely be able to capture that data and make that part of a regular board update.
Real quick, Dr. Gonzalez, I didn't see a vendor's name in there. Is there one that we're thinking of working with, or one that Litchfield is
We're
using?
working with our current vendor. It's EduPoint. And so they already provide our services for student information. So we don't have to purchase something new. It's already something that's built into the program.
Okay, I saw the synergy in there, and then I heard EduPoint, so I wasn't too sure if that was one and the same or.
Yeah, and Litchfield is actually using the same system.
Nice. Okay.
And when we renew the license for it, it's included. We just never implemented it.
Okay.
So it's really excited for me, since I've been here for a while, to be able to fully implement it and just get this online enrollment
Yeah.
registration going.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So ours will look, I just like Googled Litchfields, right? So ours will look the same. It's create an account and input your information there.
Yeah, I actually took some screenshots because I did I did it on the test environment this morning.
Oh, okay.
I didn't use my real kids, but
Right.
yeah, so the first process is really register for an account.
Yeah.
Right? Which gives you access to register your kids. Which, and then so the process in that area is you go in there, you click activate account. It'll put your email address on there. It'll send you an email. You go to your email address, personal email address, Gmail, whatever you use, right? You're going to get an email from our system. You click on it, and when you click on that, it's going to take you to our system and it's going to register your account. Because we want to make sure that we're verifying your email address too. So after that, you start putting the personal information once you're logged in.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I was just still.
I'm
Check that
glad you
out.
looked that up. You just made me think of how many times we have our students and our kids help us with those things. So just having that streamlined process in place, I just feel
Yeah,
like.
and again, like Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, at the schools, it's not like the parents gonna come in, oh my God, I gotta do, no, there's gonna be people there that are gonna be able to assist. There's also the option of doing it in Spanish, if you want to do it on your own. So there's a lot of tools, a lot of things that are gonna be cool.
Thank you. I appreciate the update, and I'm really glad to hear that we're streamlining processes using technology. My first question is, have we already started to look at what the wait list process looks like?
At this point, we don't have a wait list, but we have, that's what the policy outlines for us, is how do we treat a wait list? So yes, we are taking that into consideration as we build our system.
Thank you. And I have some requests for the welcoming environments, the front offices. I would really like to see our board pictures up in every office. I think it's a great opportunity for our families and students to really see who are the decision makers and how to reach us and who we are. So that's the first request. And then my second request is in the front offices right now, what I currently see is information only in English. So for example, there's a post on there about, community relations, and like, if you don't feel satisfied with customer service, please reach out to us, but that's only in English. So I would really need that to be in Spanish as well. And that's all I had. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bueno. Great perspective. I agree that welcoming environment at our campuses is I love going in there, so I can imagine when you are a student and a parent all over again. Not that first impressions are everything, but that really does set a tone for how your experience is going to go once you get in there and start doing things. So I'm glad you brought that up. And with that, we will move on to our next item, F2, our Phoenix Elementary School District Improvement Bonds. Mr. Manley, the floor is yours.
Proxy Superintendent, Governing Board President, and Governing Board. Tonight, I would like to bring to you guys' attention a follow-up from our partners with Stiefel regarding the issuance of our first bond. They prepared a presentation regarding our financials and how those pieces look, with the hope that this would lead to the action item that's following it along in the agenda. Before we started this, though, I wanted to thank the governing board that was present in March of last year that gave the district the option to float the election that happened in November. Took a great community effort. Taking a look overall at our pass rate at 69%. That's above and beyond what most of the rest of Maricopa County has done. And again, that opened the door for us to look at issuing these bonds. So I'm going to invite Stiefel up here. We have Mr. Castillas and Ms. Stein. From Stiefel, we also have our friends from Gust, Mr. Gill. And again, the resolution and the POS, the preliminary official statement, and the other document that asked if there's any questions, came from our friends at Gust in support of what we're looking to do now. Before I brought them up, were there any initial questions that I can answer regarding kind of the overall tenor of what this is and why we're doing it?
Yes, I have lots of those questions after reading this 34-page resolution.
Absolutely.
But what is our deadline on this? When does this have to be approved so that way we are within compliance? Or that's my first question. What is our timeline? What is our absolute deadline that we have to have something like this approved to move forward with our bonds project?
So it's my understanding that today's date is a really good date to look at that resolution and have it adopted. We have all this, just for a little bit of background over the last 2 months. It's been a tremendous effort by the business office and some of our consultants to make sure that the pieces are in place so that this resolution can get passed so that we can break ground this summer. We have a due diligence call anticipated here very shortly with a follow-up call with the financiers towards the end of this month, with the hopes that we can move forward with this so that we can break ground on some of these projects as soon as this summer. The drop, I'm not sure if I quite understand the question about the final date of when we need to kind of get moving, but the sooner the better would be.
Agreed, absolutely agreed. So my thought with it is, since this does feel like a rushed decision to me, barely getting the resolution on Friday, I would like to know more about how our bonds process works, but more so how it looks in our district right now and the financial state that we are in, and how that connects to our community. So I thought, my thought with it is I do want to go through and have the conversation and go through the presentation, but ultimately, I would love to be able to ask questions at our finance workshop that we have coming up on Friday. And if we have to, push this to April the 11th, or even like a special meeting on Friday, since we'll all be together, I think I would feel most comfortable with tabling the vote on the resolution until we've had a chance to at least ask more questions to understand just the bonds process and how that works, to make sure I'm making the decision that's right for the community. And I can't do that when I don't fully understand this process. And from what I take, we're doing this to kind of get the ball rolling. But I also am just curious, like, why we're starting with the smaller dollar amount as opposed to what the 90 cent, like, there's just so many pieces that I don't fully understand. So that was my thought with that. That's where the question came from, what our deadline is, because I would like to ask questions when we do our finance workshop that you scheduled. And thank you very much for doing that.
Sure. So perhaps we can answer those questions tonight. We do have our legal representative from Gust who helped put this together, and as well as our underwriter from Stifel. I know that this has been in the works since November, so this isn't, I don't want to represent that this was rushed, and that the due diligence was done on the back end to make sure that we can open the store, to make sure that we have the underwriting set. The plan was to have this first issuance in April, based on how we wanted to roll this out again, so that we could move forward with the priority projects that we had looked at. I don't know about what pushing things. We'd missed some scheduled follow-up pieces that are necessary to get the underwriting complete. So if we're tabling it, that would be a kind of a different discussion, but maybe we can bring you the answers that you're seeking now, and you might feel comfortable to look at that tonight, but maybe not. So I'd like to invite our supporting cast to come up, and if we have any questions, we'll go through the presentation, and we can move forward from there. Do you got Mr. Castillas, and come on down. So if I could draw your attention to the slide deck, and that's the same that you have a paper copy of in front of you. Let's see, and the very first part was some general information about how we go about issuing these bonds so that we can make improvements to the district and move forward. And I'll give it the microphone to Mr. Casillas.
Good evening, Board President Trujillo, fellow board members, Dr. Gonzalez, Cabinet, and those in the audience and listening as well. Appreciate the opportunity. A couple of weeks ago, we were before you in the work study session. As Mr. Manley had mentioned, this is a process that had been contemplated, obviously predicated on successful passage of the election last November. But even backing up to that, last year in May, as Mr. Manley mentioned, is when the governing board had moved forward and passed the resolution to call for the bond election at that time. And even before that, there were several meetings with the board and obviously working hard with staff along the way. And so we want to make sure as we continue to move forward that you are appreciative of the process. We can answer any questions that you might have. Really, we try to work backwards from when you need monies to have deposited. Once we price and underwrite the bonds, deposit monies with the county treasurer so that you have the ability to move forward on your capital improvement projects. Obviously, there are a lot of projects, 97 million, and the prioritization of those projects, I understand, as an ongoing process. And the first sale and what's reflected in the bond resolution, which Mr. Gill from Gus Rosenfeld can address if questions come up about that. It's a resolution that sets forth the parameters, what we refer to as a not to exceed resolution. So not to exceed 35 million of principal bonds that can be issued, not to exceed a 6.5% interest rate. Clearly, reading the newspapers, listening to other sources, tax exempt rates are lower than that. I think, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we've had some recent underwritings with Cartwright School District, Roosevelt Elementary, Marana Unified. Those bond issues, we were able to underwrite and price at the rate of roughly 4.25%. So if we move to page 7 of the presentation, recall we had talked about this last time. We're estimating a 4.5% interest rate. Again, we will have some more information, the bond rating that goes into the process. This authorization, the resolution allows the financing team to move forward and have conversations with the rating agency, the bond insurance company, but ultimately your bond rating plays into the final interest rate. In 2018, when you sold the last bonds, you were rated A+, which is a good rating. You also had insurance, bond insurance, which allowed you to sell at AA rates as well. So we're, again, estimating, we're trying to mitigate any potential increase to your tax rate. So President Trujillo, to your comment about why not issue all the bonds now, or it's for 97 million. So currently the district has bonding capacity for more, I believe it's 82 million. If you wanted to issue all 82 million, that would really increase the tax rate. There are some other complicating federal tax rules that Mr. Gill can talk to if you wanted to get into those details, but that basically whatever the amount is, 35 million has been programmed for this first sale to mitigate the tax rate, to allow you to proceed with the projects that you have prioritized. But you have to, at the time of bond closing, which is scheduled for mid to late May, you have to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to spend those bond proceeds within 3 years. The federal government doesn't want you to borrow at a low rate and then invest at a higher rate because you have to rebate or give that back to them. So you have to have that expectation that you would expend the monies within that time period. There are some exceptions for percentages during that 3-year period, but the 3 years is basically the time frame to expend the 35 million in what we've been talking about. This resolution allows you to move forward and put together the remaining pieces in the process to give you monies projected to be in late May to start in on your projects. And so I'll pause because I like to talk and I keep on talking. So I want to make sure other questions that you might have, Board President Torrijos or any other board members, I want to make sure that we can address those. And if Mr. Gus, Mr. Gill from Gus, had some questions on the resolution, he can address those as well.
It's just really the note about mitigating tax rates, more clarity on what that looks like. What are they now? What would a decrease look like? What would an increase look like for the district?
So we'll go back to a previous page, but since we're on this page right now, you can see, for instance, column 5, my prescription for my glasses aren't as strong as they used to be. Column 5, but your current tax rate for bonds only is 88 cents. And so based on estimates of property value that we receive from the county, again, those won't be finalized till August of this year, but it looks like your value continues to increase. And if you look at the graph on one of the previous pages, you can see that the increase of values, which helps mitigate the tax rate. It helps allowing you to have more bonding capacity to issue bonds. And this is a historical tax rate perspective. So you can see the tax rate has been generally declining, which again, a large part of that is because of the increased values of your property. So we're trying to program the first sale to give you the monies that will allow you to start in on the priority projects, mitigate the tax rate increase, as well as adhere to federal tax laws in terms of spending the monies within that time period.
The tax rate to this slide, page 4, the bond sets what the tax rate is going to be, or what because I guess I asked that question that's not fully thought out, but because what I'm looking at the big picture here is how do we get to a tax rate, if that's what we want to do, which I would think we want to do to the 2013-14 levels, than what we have now to the 22-23 levels.
So yeah, so Board Member Carrillo, if I understand your question, so the tax rate that was back in 2013-14, that was generated or function because of the property value and the amount of monies that were needed to pay debt service on the bonds and your overrides and other M&O operational monies that you use for your day-to-day activities of the school. So the voter information pamphlet that went to the voters for the 97 million, we're trying to target, I think, in that dollar tax rate, when you include all the 97 million, which is going to be over the next 3 to 4 years, roughly. So if you issue more principal, that would increase your tax rate on the bond side. It doesn't address some of the other M&O and the other components of your overall tax rate. But for the bonds, which is what we're focusing on, that would increase. And I think right now we're about 98 cents to 99 cents to stay below that dollar threshold.
So issue another issuance in a year.
Yeah, so I think the next bond issue is programmed for roughly a couple years. Again, that is tentative. So depending on the projects that you need and how fast you go through the first 35 million, you know, we would come back to the board again for a discussion work study session and then a resolution to sell the next sale of bonds. If that answers your question.
Move that issuance up.
Yes, there's that's flexible. So we're again, you want to make sure you spend the monies within that time period, and as well as to allow you sufficiently for those capital projects that you're contemplating, the priority projects. Yes.
So to put that in Mike Manley language, which I find helpful often, it's if we issued this first 35 million, there's nothing that would stop us from waiting 2 years to issue the next batch of issues. So if we could reasonably think that we could expend this issuance over the next 3 years, which initially I was looking at our capacity and some of the things that we wanted to look done, and I moved it up to keep it under $1. But in 6-7 months, if we're looking at what we have broken ground on and we're making really rapid gains on what we are looking to do, there would be nothing from preventing us from issuing that second group of bond issues before this anticipated timetable. So when we look at the life of the $97 million, there's nothing that would prevent us from coming back quicker than what this suggests, which is, I wouldn't say a conservative approach, but it's a more paced approach, that so we could reissue a second salvo of issuances before what's suggested in this manual. If that helps at all about, and we could try to do that to keep the tax rate, it would be above $1, but that if that's something that the community and the board is comfortable with, we could certainly take a look at that very carefully and expedite future issuances, as long as we don't go above our cap, which is now 83 million from the community. But it looks like with our valuation going up, we'd be able to get to where we're at as we pay principal down quicker than what this is suggesting, if that's the will of the board, if that helps at all.
Thank you for the explanations. That did make sense. And I do appreciate the note that this is flexible, and we could definitely anticipate a work study session to understand that and then proceed with the resolution and things like that. So that is still going to be my take, that I would like this to be a work study session to understand what this means. For the you said this, might be a conservative approach, but I still don't understand how this looks for our community and how it benefits or hurts us or helps make us better. So I would really appreciate a work study session specifically on this, because it's easier to learn from an example that we actually have hands-on, as opposed to something hypothetical, or we're just in a training that we're not actually working on. And I don't want to hold up the process. I would like to, again, maybe add a small portion of this to the agenda on Fridays for our finance, because this is a really important thing to understand for us, especially the dollar amount. It's a lot higher than any other amount, I think, that we've asked our community for. So I represent the community, and I need to understand what they've asked me to make our best decisions on, so that way we're focused on our students and our kids, and we're making sure that those things for them are prioritized and not the tax rate.
Board President Trujillo, we're happy to, in a work study session, whatever forum makes the most sense, to continue the dialogue You know, when we were before the board last May, when the board made the decision to move forward and call for the bond election, I believe at that time too, the information presented called for 3 sales over a period of time, because that led into the decision of the 97 million. And so, but we're happy to continue the conversation, and a work study session of that is the preference of the board. We're glad to do that too. Friday was, I think, a different, we weren't part of that initial meeting that was set for Friday. So I'm not, but we're happy if it's going to be this Friday, or perhaps one just specifically for this, to come back to a work study session, and we can look to April to entertain, or you entertain the resolution, whatever the preference is. There is that flexibility. You know, market rates continue to fluctuate, very volatile. We see that continually. I don't have a crystal ball that can say, well, if you wait, it's going to be higher, it's going to be lower. I'm not going to pretend that the market's going to do whatever the market's going to do. But we want to make sure everyone's appreciative and comfortable, and we answer all your questions.
I appreciate that. I really do. And that's exactly the mindset that's kind of carried me to this point, is act now because we don't want to upset the wheel. And I really need to understand all the spokes in the wheel, so that way we make sure none are, falling off, or the wheel is just balanced out right. So that's my recommendation. But of course, the rest of the board has to also have their point of views respected. So I apologize for taking so much time, guys.
Thank you, President Trujillo. You're fine for asking these questions, because there's a lot of clarification that we need, obviously, about this process. Just going back to the tax rate, I guess what I'm trying to understand is in terms of do we set the tax rate by issuing these bonds, and then the tax rate is what the community is paying back to pay for these bonds over the next 30 years? And if so, what is that going to be monthly?
I'll let Ms. Stein address the tax rate piece.
The
but
monthly might be a little more aggressive. I just threw that in there, but
as, we'd love these questions, because we could actually talk all day and night about them. So we welcome this, but the bonds are issued over 20 years per the Arizona statute. So
not 30. Thinking of my
and
house.
the tax rate is set, and Ms. Stein can talk about the process and when that occurs. It's a culmination of bonds that were already issued in the past, and going forward in August, you'll tell the treasurer, what your new amount is to levy for debt service. And then you have the M&O, you have the override. We worked with the district in 21 to help pass the M&O override and some previous bond elections as well. But I'll let Randy talk about the setting of the tax rate.
Thank you. Madam President, Mr. Carrillo, I think the best explanation actually is on page 7 on that tax rate page. And I want to draw your attention to column 5. Column 5 is the estimated tax rate associated with the bonds that the district already has outstanding. No action tonight, no anything. Those are the bonds that are currently outstanding. Those numbers in column 4 are given. Those are debt service numbers. We know those. The sum of all the bonds that the district already has outstanding equals those debt service amounts for those years. The number that's the unknown is in column 2, the amount of property value. It is a math calculation between the amount of property value and the amount of debt service that the district owes each year to come to the tax rate. Now, I like to tell governing boards, the one thing I know about calculating the tax rate in column 5, that estimate going out several years that you see there, it's wrong. We think it's close, but we know it's wrong because we are never exactly right on how your property value is going to grow. It's not a stab in the dark. It is an educated guess. We are looking back at how your property value has grown over time. And you can see it is actually a relatively conservative estimate of property value growth over the next several years. It is, in fact, lower than what we have seen recently. And it is that interaction between the debt service number that is an absolute given and the property value number, which we know what this year's is, and we have a sense of how it will grow, which determines that tax rate. And it's really the same concept once a new series of bonds is issued. I will draw your attention all the way over to column 12, which would be if this program, this bond sale program was executed exactly as it was laid out on this page. Again, unlikely, but if it was executed exactly as it was laid out on this page, you would see in column 12 the additional debt service associated with the full $97 million authorization that your voters gave you in November. Column 13 is the same estimate of the tax rate associated with all of that new debt service, scheduled for 3 different series, but the entire debt service piece. And then what you see in column 15 is just the sum of all the new debt service, again, executed, those series of bonds issued exactly as you see on this page, plus what the district already has outstanding in columns 4 and 5. And depending on the district's needs, the amount of bond authorization, your sensitivity to tax rate, we're looking to structure the issuance of these bonds to meet all of those needs. There's a sweet spot someplace, and we're looking to structure that to meet the needs of the individual district.
Thank you for the explanation. Just going back, you said slide 6 or 2 was the property value number. Everything else I followed, but I had just, which category is displaying the property value? Not slides.
Column 2 is
okay.
is the property values of the school district. Column 3 shows what the estimated growth rates are. And so the number that you see, I wish I could see it, 850 million for fiscal year 22-23. That's a fact. That was adopted by the County Board of Supervisors the 3rd Monday in August. That is their required protocol. The number for fiscal 24, that is an estimate that has been provided by the county. That was just provided in the last couple weeks by the county. It will not be final until the 3rd Monday in August, and there could be slight changes. Everything below that is based on an estimate based on prior growth rates, and we tend to be conservative when we estimate those property values. Why we do that, we don't want to estimate 10% growth in your property value for you only to realize 5%, because that has an adverse impact on your tax rate. It would be higher than you otherwise expected. We'd rather, if we're going to err, we'd rather your tax rate be lower than you otherwise expected. So tax rates are estimates. What we know definitively is the amount of debt service that you currently owe each of those years in column 4, and we're calculating that tax rate based on the projection of the property value.
So if the property value is increasing, then why is our tax rate decreasing?
Why? Great question. Thank you. The tax rate in column 5 is decreasing because if you look closely, and you have to look closely at small numbers, right? The property value is going up At the same time, the amount of debt service on your bonds currently outstanding is going down. So that requires less property tax rate to make the debt service payment. You have more property owners, or you have greater value of property, and you have less debt service.
So why does that require that?
I'm sorry.
Why does that need require,
Why
is that required?
the smaller amount of debt service, as the debt service declines, so does the tax rate.
But I'm saying, does it have to?
It does not have to. It is structured that way right now in columns 4 and 5. If you then look over to 14 and 15, you'll see that the decline in column 5 is actually kind of filled in with the most recent bond authorization and the 3 sales that would be, or potentially 3 sales that would be issued from that authorization. And you can see that in column 14, compared to the debt service amount in column 4, column 14 also includes the issuance of all the new bonds. So that is a higher number. And the tax rate in that, once that happens, does not decline because the debt service amount is increased.
I have a question. I'm just trying
Go
to.
ahead.
It's all jargon right now.
There's
So-
nothing straightforward about property tax in Arizona, I assure you.
So historically, the tax rate has decreased. Huh? Oh, sorry. The tax rate has, that's just what we have done. So I'm trying to decide, this calculation and this trend, is that a human decision, or is that, because we just said it's not legal. So I'm trying to understand how historically we don't do that, and what is the impact of not doing that?
Madam President, Mr. Carrillo, let me stop me if I'm not answering your question correctly. And I think what you're referring to is on page 4, that blue bar at the top is the historic bond tax rate. And there's 2 reasons that the bond tax rate would decline. And probably in every single one of those years, both of the things was happening. And what that is that the amount that you owe for debt service each year decreases. So you need less tax rate. And also the value of your property increases each year. And so you need less tax rate. If we were to go back and look at page 3, you can see over this time period that your property value has been increasing every year. So even in an increasing property value situation, even if your debt service amount, the $3 million that you owe each year to repay the bonds is exactly the same, when your property value is increasing, that tax rate is going to be decreasing.
So this is just a natural phenomena of district economy.
And it is, honestly, it is not unusual because property values do tend to go up.
Yeah.
And we do tend to decrease the debt service amount over time. Either because the district is interested in a future authorization, or as you pay bonds off, that amount, you pay off one series of bonds that was issued 10 years ago, it drops off of the calculation.
Okay, and then the tax rate is what we're paying as the district or the community?
The tax rate is being paid by all property owners in the district.
So are there districts where we're not seeing that trend, where the property value is increasing and then the tax rate is increasing?
That is a relatively common phenomenon right now. What you can't see on this page is what was happening in fiscal year 2010, 2011, 2013, and 2014, property values were actually declining
Mhm.
after the, what do we call it? A
Recession.
market blip of 2008? What do we call it? A recession, whatever it was. After the economic stress in 2008, the Arizona property valuation system actually lags a couple years. So it took a couple years, but by fiscal 2010 and fiscal 2011, property values virtually, in most districts in the state were actually declining. And we saw those bond tax rates in a lot of places increasing to account for the reduction in the property value, because you still owe $3 million. You just have less property to pay it.
Okay.
Mr. Carrillo, the one thing I want to point out is that 3 million is based on the cap of the 35 or 36 million that may or may not be approving. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
The dollar amount that we are asked to approve, which is the 35 million, the spreadsheet says 36 million. So I'm assuming this $3 million debt that we're talking about is based off of that amount.
And I apologize. That was just a number I was using as an example of how much a debt service, how much would be levied on the tax rate, the bond tax rate, in any given year. Specifically in your district in fiscal 23, the bond debt service amount was 7.2 million. And that generated a tax rate of 88 cents. That's the top line in column 4. And then the tax rate in column 5.
So this is year to year. This is for the total
This
bond
year to
amount.
year.
So
Yep.
then with that, what is it? What is the payment month to month
Associated with the
with,
$35 million.
well, yeah, that would be over 3 years, right? So,
So it's actually the combination of columns 6 and 7 is specifically this $35 million issuance.
so $8,400,000 a year.
So it'd be in the first year, we're not expecting any principal to be repaid, but there would be interest expense of approximately 1.8 million. In fiscal year 25, we're expecting a principal amount of, is that a 1? Can you see it?
1,900,000.
1.9 million with an interest expense of 1.575 million. So it would be the combination of those
Mhm.
would be the additional debt service associated with the $35 million bond issuance, which the subject of the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
So it's both the principal piece and the interest piece is what makes the debt service amount. And that would be added to the existing bond debt service in column 4. And we've just shown you this potential ways to issue the second series and the third series in the subsequent columns. All of those between 6 and 11 sum into 12 as the new debt service associated with the $97 million November authorization.
So in terms of per people impact, is this, and we understand this as like monies that we're spending per student here, and is that increasing or what does that trend look like in terms of what we spent per student? Is that question relevant? To me, it feels like it is.
Absolutely. That's where I'm confused at, Mr. Carrillo. So thank you for helping me verbalize through all of this. I really appreciate it.
So the question, if I understand it correctly, Board Member Carrillo, is the per pupil cost of the debt service or of the Because the 97 million obviously is going
Of
for
the-
capital projects.
Yeah, of the bond and for the, well, let's just say this 36 million, and to me, it's being poured into our students. So I'm trying to understand what is that per pupil?
Um,
You don't even now, you can come back, but that's the question I have. You don't have to answer it now.
no, I mean, we can get a calculator, but so 35 million with
It's
an
two-
ADM of 4,700 students roughly, is that what? 44, 5.
How many? 44?
And it's more to a question for our community, and being transparent with them, what we're spending on our students with
So
this bond.
this,
and whether
so
that's
like if we
increasing
took
or
just
decreasing.
the 35 million and divided it by the number of kids that we have, it would be about $8,200 in benefits per child. But that's if you try to extrapolate that into like the tax base in our footprint, a lot of it's commercial, a lot of it's warehousing, and that doesn't consider like if you're looking at the payment part, anybody that lives outside of our footprint, they're not getting taxed for this bond. So it'd be anybody and anything, whether they have kids or not, that owns property that pays taxes in our footprint would be kind of footing the bill to, make the local district a premier district.
Mhm.
But the benefit per child, if you kind of look at it that way, kind of hard well, it is that way. It'd be about like for this piece, and then you could actually probably divide that over 3 years, which would be the amount that we expect that we could crank these funds out to make these projects happen over the
Yes.
next 3 years. So whatever that number is you had in your calculator divided by 3. So it'd be about 8,000 over 3 years per student.
Yeah. What, do you know what our average spending is per student now? I'm just, again, these are questions to come back to, but again, it's just an attempt to be more transparent with our community.
Right.
How much,
And then I would
we're
anticipate that
spending.
before the next 3 years is out, we'd issue additional
yeah,
funds. So that would, again, it would just make the whole table rise a bit.
okay,
on
thank you.
What we're doing. I don't know if that's because it's, it's some of it's admin, some of it's transportation. The bulk of it is construction and renovation. And I'm trying to think if we'd even have capacity to do more than that amount of work in the next 3 years. But if we did, we could increase the rates and issue additional bonds like in a year instead of 2 years.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Thank you. It does.
Sure.
It's the answer I like.
Well, to me, I feel like that means we could definitely have more understanding on this and make a great decision on this, because in my head, I did want to know the per pupil spending, but I also want to know what that looks like tax wise, long range for the struggles that we're enduring right now for teacher. Really just understanding what the taxes this does bring in and what those funds are allowed to do. Not necessarily just the money that's approved from the treasury for us to move forward with projects. I really want to understand the whole cycle of how our decisions are impacting our community. Because you're right, that is everybody that doesn't just have kids that go to our school. It's everybody who lives within our district boundaries. At least that's my small-minded understanding right now. So I am still in the same mindset that I don't feel comfortable making a decision on this without fully understanding our bonds process. But I do think this is taking a lot of time. So I don't have any more tangible questions because it is, again, the deadline, there is no deadline. I do know we want to get this approved and move forward so that way we can have access to these funds. That doesn't change the priority in my head for that. I do want us to be able to move forward with what we are planning to do. I just want to fully understand that we've chosen the best, I guess, step forward as far as innovation and not focused more on, again, our tax rate. I want to lead with being focused on what our community and district needs, because that's the goal of my commitment to our student outcomes focused governance model.
Thank you, President Trujillo. And I don't know if I answered this question very well, but if this door were to open for this issuance of bonds, all the procurement rules, bidding and all that sort of stuff, approval for purchases over $100,000, that still needs to be approved by the board. So this would put money in the treasury, but then all the procurement rules would still exist. So guidance on what we would like to prioritize would still be like those funds aren't dedicated to specific things currently because we don't have the funds to dedicate them to yet. But once those funds drop, we could certainly take a look at what we want to prioritize as a community and a board and move forward with that $35 million, knowing that we'd have additional issuances coming shortly down the pike where we could continue to take a look at what's needed in the community and move forward with those as well. I don't know if that helps at all.
Not for me, because what I was aiming for is I want to understand the bigger part of this, which was whatever we approve and whatever sets what our tax rate is. That's what I want to understand. I want to understand if we did 10 million. I want to understand if we did 50, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Excuse me, Board President, would it make sense for us to look to approving this amount, but with the commitment to having an in-depth study session where we can look at those hypotheticals and look at that bigger cycle of how the school financing works, what the impact to our community tax holders, our property owners is, and do that as a bigger study session rather than cram it into Friday's session. Make it a separate study session where this is the sole purpose, because I do think this is a real meaty project for us to understand. Is that what you're?
For me, yes, it seems like we are both concerned about the tax rate, right? Whether it's dealing with student outcomes or future investment projects. So yes, because it seems like I am ready to take action now, though, on my part, but I agree. Because as I see this presentation more, those questions are just generating out of like a murky swamp of finance. I'm trying to understand. So that's where that's coming from. So I'm getting more comfortable asking questions. So we'll be worried.
We're happy to come back for a specific this topic only, and talk about all of those things. And so whatever school finance. I mean, she's an expert in school finance, so she goes to ASBO and ASBA and all the others to give presentations about this and other things. So
That's what I've seen, and those representatives are very have gone through all those motions already and given that information before. So ours is more like a presentation, and then here you go, take a vote, ask questions I don't know how to fully ask sometimes, and I want to grow that culture of the transparency and really understand and take my responsibility and vote as I with as much integrity as possible. So that is exactly what I'm turning into now, that I want a study session for just this. But again, I don't feel comfortable deciding on the amount without knowing those answers to my questions. So that's just my take, but I'll stop and see if the board has more discussion so we can move forward.
One question, one last question. Previously, this came before us and maybe it's not this, a resolution to allow superintendent and CFO to set final terms. I don't think that's even that correct term. To approve the final terms. Is this still tied into, is that component still tied into this resolution? And then my other thing is, what does our policy say in terms of approving bonds. Is this a departure?
So I'll go ahead and let Mr. Gill answer those questions. And I think I answered some questions about kind of best practices and what districts do to follow the same process that we're trying to follow here to kind of open that door. So this resolution would set in motion our ability to set those final terms. So if we delay that a bit, it would be delayed for a bit. So like we're going to meet with underwriters to get those wheels in motion, make sure that our rating is set. So those would have to stop until we get a resolution to move forward.
And Mr. Gill will address the resolution you have before you, but it is that not to exceed. So if any action was taken tonight, it currently has 35 million in it. So if the wish of the board was to take action with a different amount, it could always be written in, or if the desire of the board is to come back to a work study session and continue the conversation, then come back 2 weeks later with the resolution, after all the questions have been asked and hopefully answered, there's that flexibility as well. So I'll let Mr. Gill talk about the process that most school districts in Arizona take with these authorizing bond resolutions.
I think, I'm sorry, excuse me, right before you speak, I think if he's going to talk about the resolution, then I think we need to move on to the next item, right? So then that means that we are in our action item G1.
G1.
Okay. Mr. Gill. Madam President, members of the board, good to be here tonight. I'm with Gus Rosenfeld. I'm your bond counsel on this matter before you, the school improvement bonds. I was your election counsel, happily so, for your successful bond election. So congrats on that. We have a long history with the district and we value that. The resolution before you tonight can be described in a few different ways. I kind of shorthand it as a bond resolution. It's also an authorizing resolution. It's a parameters resolution. So I'll go through what I mean by that. It doesn't, just to get to the, I think the point that you just raised, it does not set terms in any way. It has parameters, as Mr. Casillas went through a couple of times, bonds not to exceed $35 million at a bond yield not to exceed 6.5%, at a maturity not to exceed 20 years. So the way we normally approach this is we go to a school governing board with a resolution that is pretty much exactly like this, except for obviously the name of the district and those variables I just went through, with the thought that you would approve the resolution. In the resolution, you would delegate to district staff to authorize the final terms once the bonds have been priced, typically a few weeks after this meeting, the meeting at which the resolution is approved. And assuming we can hit those numbers, those three variables I mentioned, then the bonds are approved through a bond purchase agreement, which is basically a contract between the district and Stiefel Nicholas, your bond underwriter, represented here tonight by Mr. Casillas and Ms. Stein. So that's kind of the way it normally happens. It's oftentimes a study session, not always. Some districts have been through it enough. The board members have been through it enough that they don't require a study session. Either way, we wind up at a board meeting like tonight, where we have on the agenda an authorizing resolution that, again, I will acknowledge is fairly long. A lot of it is boilerplate, as I mentioned. Your resolution is longer than most because we have some requirements we have to meet. We're selling tax exempt bonds in a market that's ruled. That's heavily regulated by the federal securities and the IRS. So we have to take care of the SEC and the IRS. So on your resolution tonight, we have a couple of sets of procedures, internal procedures that we're asking you to approve that we've been through with district staff. So that's why yours is longer than most. The resolution is 13 pages plus the form of the bond, which I thought you would find interesting to see what the actual bond will look like in the hands of the bondholders. But also attaches exhibits B and C are those procedures. They just haven't been adopted by the district in a while, so we just wanted to refresh those. There's a lot of detail in there that really isn't appropriate for tonight's discussion, but I'm happy to discuss or answer any questions you have about the resolution before you or the process in general.
So thank you, and thank you, Vice President Bueno, for keeping us in compliance. Thank you for your explanation of the resolution. I understand that. My question is in terms of our policy Is this a departure from what is written in our policy?
I'm not aware of a Phoenix L policy on the adoption or the issuance of bonds.
Okay.
It would be unusual, I think, for a school district to have a specific policy on issuing bonds. I'm not aware of any district in Arizona that has a policy. And I'm hearing that you don't have one.
Okay.
So the procedure that we're trying to accomplish is the way it's done statewide in terms of a one-time resolution approved by the board with a delegation to district staff to assuming the bonds are within the parameters that are set in the resolution, the bonds are then approved through a bond purchase agreement. And we're bond counsel to 80% or more of the school districts in Arizona. So I can safely say that's the way it's done.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. That answered my question.
Thanks. Are there any other questions on the resolution?
I don't have a question, more so a comment. I do appreciate the extra knowledge that we haven't approved certain things, and that's why this, or at least that's my understanding, that this document grew because we haven't, I guess, had some of these numbers, I guess, in place. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more?
I'm not sure. So the document is larger than normal because we have the procedures on the back, and that's simply because you haven't issued bonds recently. So we've refreshed the internal procedures regarding continuing disclosure is the nomenclature we use for it, and issuance and bond issuance tax procedures. So that's the reason for the extra length. But I'm not sure what else you might be referring to in terms of numbers.
That's important to know. That's another reason why this was so long, is that we haven't done that before. However, when you say there are no parameters or there's no things set in stone, did I hear that wrong?
Well, I didn't mean to imply that if I did. Sections 1 and 2 set the parameters that I was speaking of. So section 1 specifically mentions 35 million. If the board wanted to change that tonight or at a later date before you adopt the resolution, that can easily be changed if $35 million doesn't make sense for some reason. And section 2 has the parameters of 20 years. So you'll see bonds maturing no later than 2043, as well as that 6.5% figure I mentioned in the first paragraph of section 2. So those are those three parameters that we're really talking about here. And those are all filled in. But again, they can be changed if it's the board's desire to do so. But once the resolution is adopted, then we're stuck with those parameters, and Steve feels confident that they can deliver a bond within those parameters. Again, assuming the market doesn't do something crazy, which of course we never know.
Agreed. And that's somewhat my understanding of it. And that's why I would like to really know and fully grasp this decision that's going to last us till 2043. So thank you for that extra clarity on that and the parameters that we are deciding or being asked to decide on.
I think Mr. Creo or Governor Mr. Creo, you had asked about how the tax rate would change depending on what the first issuance was. I know that in some just verbal conversations, I talked about 50 million, which would be about $1.10-ish, down to like 22 million, which would put us at about 94 cents if I'm going by memory. So those are sort of the parameters that I was looking at, trying to keep us under that bond rate of $1. That's truly an arbitrary rate, more visually perceptive. I look at things and I think $1, I can understand $1.10 is a little bit different, but sort of the rates that I looked at for this first issuance was between 50 and 20, give or take, thinking of that, what we actually get boots on the ground to get things done with in the next 3 years, thinking that if we're more aggressive on that, we'd still have another 2/3 of the bond, or a little less if it's 35, way less if it's 50, but still doable amount over the course of the life of the span of these, what we were given permission to look at from the election in last November. So that is true. So that's could be up from 0 to, I think our cap is 83, but please let's not do 83.
So more sort of the parameters for the 35 million is it's more to it, but is more about capacity, our capacity to be able to be in compliance with what we have to spend by.
To be honest, like looking at plant services and I know working with Rocky about a lot, 15 of it is student technology and 2 million of it altogether is transportation and 2 is admin, computer stuff, technology pieces, excuse me. So that was sort of a capacity issue just to make sure that we're not sitting on extra funds. Like we still have about 1.8 from the bond that was floated in 16, which isn't terrible, but I'd like to make sure that we have a solid footing on what our priorities are and what our capacity might be, but we could push it. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't push it a bit. So that's the resolution in front of you. And
Stay in this month a bit.
What's that?
Like staying in this month a bit, push it is what you're referring to.
I mean, if we wanted to up the amount or decrease, I wouldn't want to decrease the amount. I think like 35 is a good.
Not in terms of amount, in terms of approving.
Yeah, I'd be afraid that if we push it further, we're not going to be able to break around the summer.
Okay.
Still not a hard deadline, though. That's what I asked for.
Yep, we
So
could wait
I
a
don't,
year.
again, I'm not going to operate from maybes, maybe nots. That's not what I'm doing tonight.
Okay, I motion that we table this item till next month.
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Do we vote on this or is that just an
We have to vote.
perfect? Mrs. Valencia, may we please have a roll call vote for item G2?
1.
Roll call for Ms.
Sure.
Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item G2 to discuss and approve our adoption of the governing board proclamation for the National Association of the Education of Young Children. Dr. Gonzalez, I'm assuming you'll be sharing about this.
Yes, I would like to have Ms. Angie Eddington come up to talk about the resolution and what this means for us. And then we're going to, she'll share the resolution with us and why this is important for us and our district. Oh, and Ms. Alicia Zelvis as well.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board and cabinet and community members. Tonight, we're going to discuss the Week of the Young Child and what this resolution means to our early childhood programs. So I'm here tonight to speak for Diane Salazar, and Angie is her IEIS here at Faith North, and also one of our prize national board certified teachers. This is a huge priority for our district. Early childhood and early intervention is a huge priority for our district. If we don't start with our students at the youngest of age and recognize how valuable instruction and bringing in intervention at that age is, it really doesn't put us on the right foot to opening the doors to them and helping our children and our community become successful when they start kindergarten. Faith North and our preschools across the district have adopted the Week of the Early Child, which is a NACCE celebrated week for the young child. This week, under the board's approval of the adoption of this resolution, will acknowledge April 1st through the 7th this year as the Week of the Young Child. There are a number of events that are scheduled for the Week of the Early Child, or Young Child, excuse me. And Faith North has shared us with these, and I want to share them with you. So hopefully you can come and engage or celebrate along with us. Music Monday will be Monday. Tasty Tuesday, which is making a recipe or salad from our garden. Working Together Wednesday, where the teams will create an activity together, a mural, building a tower using blocks, things like that. Artsy Thursday, which is creating art using a variety of media and create original artworks for our students. And then Family Friday, since this week there is no school on that Friday, that parents are provided a First Friday information and they'll be invited to attend the Children's Museum. So we can keep that family engagement going. Thank you. Did you have any questions?
Will these be events held at Faith North?
Yes,
Oh, please send us invites. Looking forward
absolutely.
to coming already.
Yes, we'll make sure that Ms. Salazar gets those to you.
And then related to this, I know that we've earlier approved an investment in furniture to strengthen their learning spaces. But I would also love just to, whenever we do receive that information, since you're representing Principal Salazar, to be able to see when we do receive those items.
Yes, of course. And we also have a proposal in the works for another sensory room within the Faith North community. So. Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't have any questions regarding this. I do want to really show my appreciation for this partnership, for the importance of our young, tiny learners. They are the foundation of our experience as a foundation for our community. So I really am glad to see that we are continuing this partnership, this work, and I would love to really highlight its celebrations and importance more consistently, because I think it really is such an important thing to showcase, especially here in the heart of Central Phoenix. So thank you guys very much for this. I appreciate the extra information about the daily activities. Thank you for support from the board as well.
Thank you.
So this is an action item, so.
Perfect. Do we have a motion to approve our governing board proclamation for the National Association for the Education of Young Children's Week of the Young Child?
Alicia being so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote, Mrs. Valencia?
Roll call vote for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item H. Oh, we do have
A photo op.
a photo opportunity for our teachers.
So if our Faith North team and our governing board would come together, we'd love to capture
Thank
a
you
photo
for
of
reminding
this so
me.
that we have this documented.
Thank you, thank you.
And Dr. Ailshire is going to be our photographer.
Thank you again, Dr. Gonzalez, for the prompt. With that, we'll move on to item H1, board reports and requests. Do we have any this evening? My apologies, H1 board requests. I have one. I would love to have the week of the young child. I would like to ask that we consider naming the first week of April going forward as the NAEYC's week of the young child. So that way, again, we solidify our commitment to the partnership that supports our tiny young learners going forward. So that's my board request for consideration. Thank you. All right, hearing no other board reports, we can move on to item H2, future agenda items.
Yes, I would like to request that our April 11th meeting include a information only study session on our bond sales. And then April 25th meeting is action item for the bond sales.
For the what again? Sorry, the action item. Okay. And you said the 11th, the work study session? Okay, for the agenda, just on interfering with the study session, but it's just approval for the NLAO conference I think it's in July. So not something too high priority, but should do it pretty soon.
I don't understand what you're saying.
To approve travel and attendance for the NLAO conference.
Oh,
And
that's a request. I thought you were still talking about the bond sale.
I was asking that because didn't want to put it on when we did the work study session.
Didn't want to put what?
Is there a question of whether the April 11th request is to be a study session with no action items on the agenda or just
Yes.
no action on the bond?
No, it's just the on the bond.
So strictly.
Okay, so then if we can do it as soon as possible, then.
Could I make a suggestion? Pardon me.
Go ahead.
I know that I'm not sure if we have a quorum on Friday for that study session with true professionals. Would we like to perhaps have a decision-making attempt at following that if those needs are met about the bond questions?
No, because what I understood was that the conversation about the sale for the bonds should be its own standalone study session. Are we all in agreement or we're not?
I will defer to you all. I'm fine with taking action, but I'm fine with what dates you set out.
I'm also fine with taking action on April 11th if we feel that we have the capacity to get the information, ask all the questions, and then make the decision as on the agenda. What do you guys prefer? Okay, so then scratch my first request for the agenda item. So the agenda item is for April 11th meeting is number one, to have a study session regarding our bond sale. So that would be before our regular meeting. And then second would be on the agenda for our board meeting on April 11th to have this action item on adopting the resolution. Yes.
Awesome plan.
Thank you, Ms. Bueno. That works for my brain as well. Any further future agenda items?
I just have one. Receive, discuss, and take possible action to amend our open enrollment policy.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Any other future agenda items? Hearing none, we can move on to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening?
I have a point of clarification, President Trujillo. Going back to what Mr. Carrillo had mentioned, Do you still want to stand by the NALEO conference? You had a question or a suggestion?
Again, I'll defer to the superintendent and our president, vice president. My goal is just if we're gonna focus on the work study session, and doing action item on that day, then I'm fine with not doing it. But if we're gonna include other action items, then we can include it on April 11th.
Thank you.
May I ask a clarifying question just to get some guidance from the board about the 11th? Would you like for me to set up a work study session with our current vendors with the addition of our underwriter, just so we can a little direction on where to go with that specifically, or just some guidance on what we're looking for?
That sounds great. Could you name those?
Well, I was thinking true professionals from the same folks that are doing Friday, Stifle and Gust, so that all the players are there. And I'm writing a check for folks that I'm trying to make eye contact with Bob right now. If the 11th study session before the next governing board meeting might work for Stifle to get something on the books to take care of business. And I'd have to also double up with vendors to see if that's a possibility, but that would be my first shot.
Thank you for the question.
Oh,
May I approach?
Please, yes.
Board President Trujillo, Mr. Manley, are you asking if we're available on the 11th for a work study session and potentially to consider an authorizing resolution?
yes, sir.
Yeah, so we were discussing the 11th. At what time would it be? The 5:15 time, or would it be
I would
something?
think I'm spitballing here, Bob, but I'm thinking like 3:30 for a study session with a first agenda item on the 11th being the adoption of the resolution, something along those lines. Oh, I'm seeing.
One of us will be here because we were
Understood.
traveling other states, so we'll figure that out. Yes, we want to make sure we are available for sure.
Figured while all the brains are in the room, we could at least rule some things out.
Then you definitely want her, not me.
Is that the rock, paper, scissors I didn't see there a minute ago? Thank you very much. So I think I have some direction. Thank you.
And just for clarification, Mr. Manley, at study sessions, we can't vote.
No, so the study session would be followed by the regular board meeting where we could vote, right?
Mhm.
Am I thinking correctly? Okay, thank you.
We've got one more agenda item.
Yeah, I just had one more. Future agenda, a discussion of board like conferences or whatever, so that we could just all have an idea of what we're all going to. We can plan to go to some of the same or different or whatever. So like a big chart of all the conferences that might happen in the next year.
And you want that on the April 11th?
Oh,
agenda?
no, just in whenever that fits in for the
Like
agenda.
August.
I do have a question. Do you have a certain budget in mind?
Yeah, it's not I don't know who does that.
No, we don't at this point, but I think having the options of knowing which ones we would want to attend and yourself included, like kind of seeing what that is. Long ago, before you were here, we did request to know which associations we are members of. So that information might be really helpful to know when building this up, but that is something that we just spoke to Mrs. Valencia about, trying to plan that better so we have some more understanding and structure going forward, especially with finances included. So perfect time. I'm really grateful for the prompt.
Thank you.
I think that is something too that we can weave into operating procedures, or guardrails for new board members. So maybe it can be a study session.
Just point of order.
on this future agenda items, you can offer, because it's not noticed about the content of what we're talking about, you can offer an idea, but you shouldn't debate or discuss the substance of that idea because we're not noticed for that item. So just be careful about, it's one thing to suggest it, to have it, to park that discussion for when it actually gets on the agenda, but it's not on the agenda tonight, so let's not talk about it. Okay.
Thank you, but so would that be a separate agenda item for July's travel that you're mentioning? We should probably have at least something to Mr. Carrillo and the rest of the board to decide whether or not that's feasible. Or at least that way we get it on an agenda sooner than, I guess, the bigger picture of items, just to make sure his request is adhered to, I guess.
I noted his request and we'll work with our board officers to set that agenda.
Thank you. Any other items? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn our board meeting?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, may we please have a roll call vote to adjourn our meeting this evening, Mrs. Valencia?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our motion passes and we will adjourn this evening at 7:19 and be back here April the 11th at, March 25th. I'm sorry, 24th, 3:30 to 5:30 for a study session. And then after that, April 11th at 5:15, unless that changes prior to. Thank you everyone for being with us tonight. Have a great evening. Safe travels.